healthy brain. And I'm happy you all joined, and I think you made the right choice to join this meeting in this afternoon, because we have a very exciting program with a nice lineup of speakers. And at the end, we will even have virtual drinks. I will be the host of the program today. My name is Arthur Willemsen. On the one hand, I'm working at the Radboud UMC and the Donders Institute. And on the other hand, I'm the speerpuntentracker of Healthy Brain in the region Nijmegen. And if you try Google Translate with speerpuntentracker, then I'm apparently the spearhead of the tractor. So I'm not sure what that means, but in practice, I'm trying to connect all the dots that are in the region Nijmegen in relation to healthy brain. So on the academic side, but also on the business side and everything in between. And basically that job is especially where this meeting is all about. Because here in the region, we have a lot of research on healthy brain. And today we are trying to connect to anyone who's interested in applying that research. And there's very interesting research and very interesting applications possible, and applications that can and will have impact in our daily lives. Good. In the invitation, you've read that we have a dream, and I would like to give you some examples we are dreaming about. 3 examples where science meets business. The first example is about sleep. And it's of course very close to dreaming, but this one might become real. Here at the university, we do high quality research on sleep. A nice example is described in this paper in Current Biology. It's about toxic metabolites that increase the chances on diseases, and in this case on Alzheimer. And by improving sleep, the risk can be reduced. We also know that optimizing the sleep cycle does not only reduce those health risks, but also give extra energy and will improve your well-being in general. And even better, we also are learning how the sleep cycle can be influenced. And let's take a moment and imagine what we could do with this knowledge. And although I cannot see your faces, but I imagine that you will have 3 reactions basically. First of all, the scientists among you will say, wow, we need further research. For example, can we enhance the sleep function by stimulating slow waves during sleep? Interesting question. And there are some policymakers and business developers among you who are probably thinking, I don't see an Afro proposal or Horizon Europe grant already from this paper. And of course, there are business representatives or entrepreneurs among the audience, and they might think, I hope this is not going to be another wasted event. But it won't be. If you use your creativity, and just let me help you. Let me show the application of this research paper, and let me make the connection for you. This is a picture of a smart bed, and that's basically the bed of the future. And something that's going to happen in the coming years. It integrates basically all the functions that we already have around the bed. Of course, the sleeping function, but also you have lights, music, maybe Netflix and air conditioning. But in the future, it will also have sensors that measure your sleep cycle and equipment that will influence your sleeping patterns. So it will be much more than the beds we have at the moment. Good. Who do we need to make this happen? First of all, we need the sleep researchers. We need data science companies, hardware companies, bed manufacturers, distribution companies, and bed shops. And the good thing about this is that all those partners are already available in the region. And imagine what it would bring if these beds will become standard in Nijmegen, the Netherlands, and in the world. It would mean that Nijmegen could be the region of the smart beds. So this paper is not only interesting stuff for scientists, but it's also a lead to major business development and economic impact. Let me give you another completely different example. This is a scientific paper on probiotics. That's a kind of microorganisms. In this case, a kind that has a positive effect on cognition, in case you are stressed. This is one of the research examples that show that your diet can influence your mental well-being, your mental stability, and also your mental capabilities. What we also know is that the brain is one or the most individual organ, and therefore the impact of a diet can differ per person. And again, imagine what we could do with this knowledge. This is a picture of food, and it depicts basically personalized food. So food that's not general, but produced especially for you. To optimize your mental state, you should not consume the standard food, but you should get personalized food. So in the example, if you experience a lot of stress, you should buy food with the probiotics added. You will go basically to your local food store, show your smartphone with your health data, and you will get milk, fruit, bread, whatever, with the probiotics added. And a dream, this is a dream, and I understand that some of you think, hey, this is maybe a nightmare because I have to show my health data at the grocery store, but that's something we also have to work on. And then again, who do we need to make this happen? First of all, the researchers, food producers, software companies, we need distributors and retailers. And again, all these partners are available already in the Nijmegen area. And furthermore, this is from a research perspective, quite an interesting example because it combines the excellent research on healthy brain in Nijmegen with the excellent research on food in Wageningen. A last example, and this is quite a famous publication, and it's also an example where we are already further down the road. It's on a research paper on Parkinson's disease. One of the possible effects of Parkinson is a so-called freezing of gait. It means that Parkinson patients freeze when they are walking because something in their brain blocks the attempt to walk. And in this study, it was shown that the Parkinson patient who had problems with walking, so really suffered from freezing of gait, didn't have any problems when he was put on a bicycle and could cycle. So somehow the freezing was not connected with the movement in general, but with the specific processes in the brain involved in walking. And later research showed that freezing stopped in case lines were visible in front of the patient. Now, based on this knowledge, a laser shoe was developed. So in front of the shoe, you see a small device, and that's the laser. And that shoe projects a ray of light in front of the patient, and the patient does not freeze anymore. I don't have the time to show the videos, but you can find them on YouTube, and it's really amazing. If the patient doesn't have these shoes, he stops and freezes, but with the shoes, with the laser, you really see him walking again. Again, who do we need to bring this to the market? We need some researchers, we need technology companies, shoe manufacturers. And see in the picture, we might need some fashion designers from Arnhem, distributors and shoe shops. And again, all these are available in the region. So I've shown you 3 articles that have the potential to have major impacts on the economy of the region, if we could join forces and connect to all the relevant partners involved. And if I tell you that we produce here in Nijmegen more than 1,200 research papers a year, then probably we are sitting on a pot of gold with a major potential to create economic and societal impact. And this might also be a nice bridge to the next speaker. And the next speaker is Monique Esselbrugge. Monique Esselbrugge is councillor, wethouder of the city of Nijmegen. And Monique will explain what Nijmegen plans to do to stimulate the economy and societal impact. Monique, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Maybe we call this session Government Meets Science and Business. It's nice to have you here. However, it is digital, but it is very important to have this kind of meetings, although we are now in the COVID-19 crisis. But this crisis shows actually how vulnerable we are, and it also shows how important research and development within healthcare is, because that's our only way out of this crisis. And this means also that it's crucial that we keep educating young people to become the scientists of the future. For our local business community, it's crucial to have sufficiently suitable and well-qualified personnel. And that's very difficult. Only by cooperating, we can ensure that young people see Nijmegen also as the city of health and high tech, because we are not well known actually as the city of health and high tech. But as Arthur Willemsen told us with 3 examples, we are actually, it is evidence-based. We can claim that we are the health and high tech city, not only for the Netherlands, but also in Europe and maybe even the world. So we have chosen as city not only to have a city marketing on all the city with the young vibe, and all here we have, of course, a young vibe sitting in this meeting, but we also have one spear point or focus point, how do we call it, to choose Nijmegen as the health and high tech city. So that is what we are good at, and despite of the fact that health and high tech has a large potential, it isn't even focused enough. And we talked with a lot of scientists and a lot of entrepreneurs and partners to identify what is our strong points within healthcare. And there are 3 points, focus points in healthcare, evidence-based in this city, and that's drugs discovery and development. It is digital health, and it is the theme of today, a healthy brain. And we also have 2 focus points on the high tech, and that is radio frequency and the CITC. And of course, the crossovers between healthcare and high tech is the smart bed, what was one of your examples. So we're not only the city of the smart beds, but we are more than that, but more, I hope also of the smart beds in the future. My bed is not that smart yet, I can tell you that. Besides the scientific impact, it aims, of course, to achieve an economic and social impact. And these spearheads will lead to, I think, to those important research results. Within the spearhead of Healthy Brain, you see also new research projects. And that will lead, of course, to employment opportunities for young graduates and PhDs. And maybe it's fun to know about me that I've got my PhD. Because maybe you think it's just a counselor, but some counselors also have PhDs. Not in a healthy brain, of course, but in complex decision making. And that's maybe a nice crossover for the future, for my own future, to look at it in. Because so the new research projects are most important for us to attract young people to this city. And one of those good examples is, of course, the Healthy Brain study, but also all the studies that are done with the Parkinson Net. I'm one of the big ambassadors of Bas Bloem, and Bas Bloem is one of the big ambassadors of the city of Nijmegen, so that's very good. Another reason why it is so important is also the consortia of companies you work within. You see all the collaboration with, I think, of POM, but also of the tech giant Verily. What's one of the main partnerships in Parkinson Net. So it will attract companies all over the world to establish in Nijmegen. And that's, of course, nice for our city. And the third and last thing that's very important for the government for in the case of a healthy brain is the ecosystem that you can develop with the people and with the companies. And one of the new things that we try to establish with you is a digital health hub. So that Nijmegen, or more the region of Arm and Nijmegen, will also be known as the digital health hub. And that's one of the projects we are financing also as a government. And of course, I know we are just as a government play a small and modest role in all of this. It is, of course, the scientists and the business that are playing the most important role. But we have to do it together. And I think that's maybe why I said government meet scientists, meet business. I think the triple helix is very important to get the city in the near future more expanding as health and high-tech city. But it is also important for your projects and for your business to act in a triple helix way. And I think that a healthy brain is one of the best focus points with a lot of opportunities to also for the scientists, the entrepreneurs, but also for the government. This meeting, I see it as one of another good example and initiative and action that despite of that we are not really together because of the crisis, we still work together on the future. And I hope this is a fruitful meeting for you. And I thank you for your invitation. And I like to actually want to express my my gratitude for one person in particular. Just give me 1 minute to thank, and I see him now close in my screen. I hope you also see him. But because since of the start of Science Meet Business in 2011, John Schalke has put his heart and soul in stimulating entrepreneurship in life sciences and health in the Nijmegen region. I met him a few times, and he has assisted many entrepreneurs in the growth process, and often with the help of his enormous network. However, John, all good things come to an end, and John has decided to retire next January. Now, these times of Corona do not make the best time to say goodbye, especially for someone like John, who has been so involved with everyone and also so involved with the city of Nijmegen. John would like to say goodbye in person to his colleagues and to our network in the first SMB meeting we can organize in a normal way at the Novio Tech campus. But the team hopes to be able to do that in the first half of next year, and will inform, of course, all of you to say goodbye to John. But for now, I would like to digitally thank you, John, for all your efforts. A bunch of flowers have already become to your home, I hope. And I hope all the 55 participants in this meeting can now give you a warm applause for all the work you did. So unmute and together, and applause for John.
Thank you very much, Monique, and others, and also for the really beautiful flowers. And I'm sure I'm going to see you somewhere, somehow in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And thank you all just for listening to me for a few minutes, and have a nice meeting.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you for your clear presentation. And let's move on to the next speaker in our program. Now, happy to introduce Guillen Fernandez. Guillen Fernandez has several functions, and to name the most important ones. He's a neurologist. He's professor in the field of memory and emotion at the Radboud UMC, and is also one of the directors of the Donders Institute. And he's also project leader of the Healthy Brain Study. And today he will explain to us what this is about and what he wants to achieve with the Healthy Brain Initiative. Guillen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to use this opportunity to tell you something about the Healthy Brain Initiative, which is more than just the Healthy Brain Study. The initiative is a joint venture between the Radboud University, the Radboud UMC, and the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics. Just imagine an individual, a human being, with all his thoughts and feelings, with his commitments and his decisions, his complex decisions perhaps, with all his actions, his motoric actions, his feelings, his perception of the world, his love or hate. All these processes are not made by heart and soul, they're made by the brain. The human brain is the most individual organ we have. There's no other organ where that many genes are expressed as in the brain. And given its plasticity, it is formed by all the experiences we have throughout our life. It's a rather complex organ. We estimate that it has about 100 billion neurons, and each with about 10,000 connections. So you're adding up at quadrillion connections. What's also interesting is it is way more energy efficient in its computations than compared to a conventional computer we are all using and sitting in front of. And if we preserve the health of the brain, it helps avoiding the most burdensome diseases we have. But the brain is a bit more complex than many other organs. Given its connection to the sensory organs, given its interactions and the basis for social interactions, it is indeed a biosocial environmental hybrid. Factors in the environment, factors in the social interaction are all affecting the brain, but also measures in the body. To mention the example of the food example. So something from the resorbed by the gut is affecting the brain later on. But how does it work? How can we study that? There's at least a good reason to study it because there are many unmet needs. For example, in healthcare, if you look into the burden of disease, of different diseases, and here they are indicated by the size of the circle, you see that the brain-related disorders are the most burdensome. The mental disorders with all the different ones. Stroke, injuries, it's quite a bit on brain injury, of course. Then neurological disorders like Parkinson's disease, we mentioned it already. All these together are more burdensome than, for example, cancer or cardiovascular disease. And the most daunting fact is that there's the largest gap between disease burden and therapeutic solutions. Many neurological disorders are very chronic and resistant to healing. But also outside medicine, there's need. For example, in technology, present-day artificial intelligence solutions are based on principles of deep neural networks and reinforcement learning, principles of neuroscience. But many other processes in real life nowadays in technology are linked to brain function, brain-computer interface, language processing, translation, and so forth. Education is in the end also a brain function. How do you create knowledge? How do you create a responsible person? All this is something where the interaction, the social interaction, and the efforts of the individual leads to education. But also in society, we would like to understand why certain people behave in a certain way and if that is a societal problem. or not, or it's good for society. So these kinds of things we would like to understand and perhaps to modulate. A couple of years ago, there were some sensible politicians at the G7 summit in Japan in 2016. They concluded that the human brain is the civilization's most precious resource. Investment in brain science is therefore an investment in the future of society. 4 years later, I'm afraid you wouldn't get that conclusion. But this political statement is linked to an increase in neuroscience efforts. This is a graph showing the number of scientific publications per year, starting in 1994, which is kind of a critical year for the start of present-day neuroscience. And as you can see, since then, all biomedical publications increased by the factor of 3. But neuroscience publication as a rapidly growing field is 14 times more than 1995. The Netherlands is a hotspot in brain research. On the left side, you see an analysis comparing the neuroscience activity and the impact of neuroscience of different countries. And as you can see in the activity index, that's the relation between neuroscience and other research fields. Netherlands has a particular focus on neuroscience. And this focus goes along with the highest citation rates of papers published by Dutch neuroscientists. In addition, Nijmegen is the right place because we have the Dundas Institute, a brain research institute across 3 faculties with more than 700 researchers. We have the Behavioral Science Institute, we have the Max Planck Institute on campus, and many other institutes that are interested, at least in part, on how the brain works. Therefore, the Radboud campus, as I said, the Radboud University, the Radboud UMC, and the Max Planck Institute decided to create kind of a spider web over campus, all related to brain research. And you see, many institutes, I mentioned a few here, like the Health Science Institute and Molecular Life Science Institute, the Dundas and the Behavioral Science Institute, the Max Planck, but also the Institute for Computing Information Sciences, for example, looking into artificial intelligence. The Institute for Molecular Materials are looking into certain substances that can be used, for example, as probes for brain stimulation. The Nijmegen School of Management is really interested in understanding how management decisions are made. And finally, the Center for Language Studies tries to understand how language is used to communicate between individuals or societies. The Healthy Brain Initiative is just an umbrella organization. And here I mentioned 3 large-scale programs that are all falling under that umbrella. Parkinson of Mart, already mentioned, large-scale studies together with industry, Verily, life sciences on the decentral care of Parkinson patients, but also food and cognition. Arthur mentioned already an example of that program. How does food influence cognition and how cognition influences food intake? And then language interaction, a large-scale research program with I think 30 million euros over 10 years were spent or are spent on the research on how language helps us to interact with other individuals and how language interacts with other cognitive domains. The newest addition to all our neuroscience activity is the European University Neurotech EU. You may know the European Union has established a network of European universities that are supposed to work together to create a fluent network for students and scientists across Europe and different areas of Europe's north, south, east, and west. And the Neurotech EU and European University of Brain and Technology was established under the leadership of the Radboud University, and in particular the Dundas Institute. But their universities in Spain, Hungary, Germany, Romania, Czech, and England, and UK, and Sweden. So, and many societal partners, including companies, are involved as well. There is a virtual opening on December 16th, and you can register at that email address or web address. And to foster the Healthy Brain Initiative, the foundation behind our university finances generously one study that should bring together all the activities across campus, the Healthy Brain Study, how to understand the brain of people between 30 and 39. This is a large-scale studies, and that complements smaller scale studies that we do more or less every day in our laboratories. I don't like to go into all these differences, but the basic message is that such a large-scale study has advantages over smaller scale studies, also disadvantages, of course, but that bring us lots of advantages. We have interdisciplinary research, so we really try to understand the brain in its complex interaction. We do a multidimensional assessment, not only memory or only language. We do a large sample size with validity at the single subject level. We do not only one-shot experiment where subject is coming under certain idea in 1 hour, but we follow them over full years. I will show you in a minute. And we try to combine laboratory assessment with real-world assessment. And most of our usual studies are done with students as volunteers. And here we take a population-based sample reflecting the population in Nijmegen area. As I said, large sample, we aim at 1,000 individuals aged between 30 to 39, rather healthy, Dutch speaking. They are representative and they are monitored and adjusted on gender, age, and education so that we are really representative for the area. The overall design structure is that we ask the participants to do some homework 3 times in 1 year. And then they have a burst week prior their visit to the laboratory. And the laboratory visit is a full day visit. And then after 3 to 4 months, people come back and then again. And we are not doing different things, but we do the same things because we would like to see how dynamic, for example, the season is affecting these measures. During the burst week, we do quite some different things. We collect biosamples. We have self-report data and via the smartphone, you get kind of prompted to give certain answers, for example, on the stress level. We do physiological recordings during the day by wearable devices, smartwatch, and some other sensors. And during the night, we have sleep recordings, EEG recordings. During the lab visit, it's a full working day from 8 to 4. And you can see we take more blood samples and so forth, biosamples. We do neuroimaging. Of course, we like to know something about the brain. We do very controlled behavioral tasks. We do kind of fitness tests and stress tests called pressure tests. So we challenge our subjects. We have further cognitive and affective tasks. We check some of the sensors, whether they all work as they should. And therefore, we get a very good picture of the individuals and how they operate. This is kind of the overview of the entire study. We started on the campus as a team science effort to design the study in 2017. And we started recruitment and study assessment in summer 2019. Unfortunately, due to Corona, we had to stop in spring, of course. Now we are back to almost normal speed. And we expect still by the end of 2022 to have all data collected, and we will have quite some biosamples, plus 90 terabytes of directly recorded data and more than 500,000 hours of assessments. What do we offer? What's in for you? We offer the data. It will be not immediately, at least not directly, but indirectly via collaboration, also immediately available for research. We provide expertise in all kinds of levels of research that is related to the brain and beyond. We have a strong network academic, for example, due to Neurotech EU, and we have an infrastructure for small and large scale studies. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Guyen. So let's look at the questions. I saw a question in the chat, and maybe for the interaction, it's nicer if this is a question from Frank Smeets. Frank, can you unmute and ask a question directly to Guyen?
Yes, please do. Guyen, good afternoon. Thanks for this interesting presentation. And look forward to see results, of course, on these studies. Apparently, the brain research is an exponential technology. And if you think about a future, about, let's say, 20, 30 years from now, can you foresee, or do you want to guess, what kind of aspects of the human physics we will then measure, for instance, by wearables, to monitor our cognitive and mental health?
Yeah, I think one has to distinguish between two lines there. One is really on patients, so the impaired brain health. And there I expect that we will work way more with direct monitoring, perhaps invasively in certain patients or non-invasively, and to have a smart feedback to stimulate or another way modulate brain function. So these kind of loops where we have sensors on one hand and feedback in the other hand, that is something I would expect to exist. Another thing is now looking into healthy people. I said already, in particular mental disorders, but in general brain-based disorders are dauntingly chronic. So prevention is key over treatment. And the prevention of, for example, mental health could be a comprehensive set, from controlling sleep and food up to sensors that are able to measure stress levels, for example, and to relate that. And the instructions and trainings how to cope with certain situations in an individualized form, that we as healthy subjects are getting brain implants in 20 years, and that we are able to further optimize a pretty optimized complex system. I'm not that optimistic, but perhaps I'm too limited in my practical research.
Thank you.
Any more questions directly or in the chat? At least I have a question, Guyen. Your own field is memory and emotion. And how do you see the research in your field applied in our daily life? And a second question, if you see applications, how do you see companies in the region being involved in this application?
Yeah. I may bring two examples. Learning a foreign language is, at least for adults, a difficult task. Vocabulary learning is one. There are many techniques that help learning, for example, vocabulary in a foreign language. And if you combine these techniques in a smart way, you can be way more effective in acquiring a foreign language. And a group from Dundas researchers has won a worldwide competition on developing an app for vocabulary learning. So that was, I think, a British company behind that, so not a regional one, that had this kind of call for that competition. And that was won against competitors from the MIT and I don't know. So that was a great success in developing an app that is learning based on the performance of the subject and knowing how the company was called Memrise. Thank you. Malika is in the board. She was in the team, if I remember correctly. She won the Memrise Prize. And that is one example. And the other example I would like to bring is, usually when we think about memory, is that we would like to get our memory be better. Huh? But especially if we think about, for example, about Alzheimer and aging. But for many people with mental disorders, a traumatic memory is a memory that returns and causes suffering. So there are also memories that are too good because and therefore they are retrieved unintentionally. And I think we have quite some insight into how memories can be suppressed, how memories can be less likely retrieved. And that could be very helpful in treating people with traumatic memories. That could be perhaps an opportunity, could be also in terms of app.
Okay, thank you. I see we have a question from Peter Dane. Peter, could you ask your question directly?
Please unmute. Yeah.
Yes, so it was at another location. Guillaume, yes, it's a very interesting, let's say the future. I'm thinking about the future as well. So my question was, are you already aware of remote stress measurement tools in the society? And if so, what do they measure?
The measure, the stress measure, for example, the classical one for hormones or the sympathetic nervous system level, have the problem that they cannot easily distinguish between positive or negative arousal. So if you have a positive arousal, then you have the same increase in stress hormones or sympathetic nervous system. So that is unfortunately not an easy one. So you need a more complex measure that combines the perception of the person, the subjective perception, combined with these kinds of measures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But that's possible. Otherwise, I'm not aware that just based on data from, for example, skin conductance, a measure of sympathetic nervous system, to derive directly a stress measure. Because positive arousal, if you do sports, if you walk up the stairs, so you need quite a complex set of measures to be sure that this is, for example, something related to an event of anxiety or whatever, or stress.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to have a discrimination between chronic stress, I mean ROS-related stress, then let's say momentum stress like increased heartbeat or increased activity, which is still physiology in contrast to patho, right?
Yeah, the chronic stress is tremendously difficult to measure. One can measure easily some consequences of it. Certain brain structures, for example, appear to get smaller with chronic stress, like the hippocampus. But to measure while somebody is in chronic stress beyond just asking is really difficult.
Yeah, I realize.
Could be, for example, a good link with inflammation. There are quite some associations there, and we hope, for example, in Healthy Brain to make that association between inflammatory markers and mental well-being, because we expect quite a correlation there, or association.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, may I go ahead? So thank you for the interesting talk again. I'm the co-founder of a small startup called BrainShip, and we've developed a screening solution for cognitive decline based on EEG. And I'm interested in whether you're also measuring any type of EEG data or doing short EEG recording, like resting state EEG or any type of ERPs in these individuals that you're monitoring.
In these individuals, the only measure we have in that relation is the sleep recording, which is done with a sleep band. So it's a simple EEG, far away from a kind of a full set of EEG recordings. But there are 3 weeks of nights full of sleep recording for all subjects.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just a follow-up question. What kind of, I saw that you measure cognition as well. What kind of, I assume that you use some kind of psychometric questionnaires. Which ones in particular, if you just can list a few?
That's a long list. I can't, I don't even remember it, despite being a memory researcher. So we took kind of, we started, of course, what is necessary to measure, and we looked on campus where we have the strongest expertise. It's a broad spectrum of cognitive measures with, for example, a hefty measure on linguistic and language skills, but of course, memory, cognitive control, problem-solving abilities, all kinds of emotional measures, and many, many more, including also very basic things like working memory are recorded. That is done during each of the lab visits and also during the homework, and it's very comprehensive. But for that, it would be good to get in contact so that we can tell you more about the precise measures taken. But there are many. I think.
Okay, thank you.
We will get what you need.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions? Then another question from my side. So now and in the coming years, you will have lots of data available from the Healthy Brain Study. If I'm a company and or representing a company, how can I get access to those data?
Yeah, at the beginning, it would be good to ask us. That's Lucy Overbeck, the project manager, or myself. And from there, we would try to find out which researcher on campus is the best fit to the question. And then we would bring them together. And then there would be initially a scientific collaboration possible between, for example, a company and that researcher. In the long run, when the data is, the first analyses have been done, then sooner or later, the data will become publicly available. We have still some legal and technical difficulties to master, but I expect a fully freely accessible data set in the end.
Okay, thank you. I see that Geeske has a question. Geeske, could you unmute?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for your presentation. Apologies if I missed it, but how long and how frequent will the participants be followed up for?
Yeah, so this is for 1 year, and they come for 3 weeks. They have these burst weeks, and in each of these burst weeks, they come for a full day to the laboratory, to the campus. So there's 3 kind of measures distributed over 1 year.
There's no long-term follow-up over years.
Yeah, we have the ability to, and we are allowed by the ethical committee to contact these people again, to for example, to have a long-term follow-up after 5 or 10 years, and we also tell that our subjects, but that is not the main reason for the repeated measures to see a development, because 1 year, of course, especially in that age range where development is over and aging is not really starting, we expect quite some stability on one hand, and therefore we expect that things like a life event and now unfortunately the corona crisis have quite some impact on the people, and that we can follow that by measuring these people 3 times. We were hoping for very good events and very bad events during that year. We didn't expect and such an event that we can't measure anymore, but yeah, that happened. But that's the logic. But we can in theory, but for example, disease prediction or these kind of things, the sample is too small. We would, in these cases, we would, for example, several of our measures are similar or identical to measures from the UK Biobank, this humongous study that they do in the UK. For example, if you discover a gene association with mental health in UK Biobank, then you can go into our database looking into the same genetic variant, and you have a way deeper phenotype, and therefore you can do further analysis there. Yep.
Okay, we have time for one more last question, and see that Frank Smeets has another question. Frank?
Yeah, again, there are big studies on population in South Holland, in the north of Netherlands, etc. Is it possible to use the data generated in these populations, from these populations? Can it also be used in the studies that you're going to do within the healthy brain?
Yeah, the big studies from Rotterdam. I think you're referring to Generation R and the Rotterdam study, one on development and the other on aging, are kind of classical disease risk studies. You start early, and then you see how they develop, and you try to follow them up for tens of years. And these are very large samples. But they are, of course, we can align to them similar to the UK Biobank, although our measures are closer to the UK Biobank. But we, by purpose, have chosen for another age range, the first thing. And the second thing is our phenotype is way beyond medicine. Although I have a medical background, but for us, it's as important to understand economic decision-making and how that interacts with, for example, food intake. And and then many other things. So our sample is looking into the variability in 1 year, but otherwise stable, and not so much on disease risks. For that, our sample is too small.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kian. Very interesting talk, but of course, it's also very interesting to see how we can connect from the science you are presenting to business. And for that, we have another speaker, and that's Lucas Nolles. Lucas is founder and CEO of Nolles Information Technologies. And the mission of his company is to provide innovative tools for behavior, health, and well-being. His company started in the 80s and has now 23 offices in 10 different countries. And Lucas is very well connected to the universities in Nijmegen and Wageningen, and will tell us today about the link with the Healthy Brain initiative. Lucas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just to double check, is my screen visible? Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about mice and men. I'm going to talk about healthy brains, but also about healthy business, because I'm a scientist who turned entrepreneur, and I'm active in a variety of domains, which are illustrated on this picture. I took the ones that are most relevant to today's meeting. You see a mouse, you see babies, you see children, you see adult consumers, and you see some technology, instrumented cages, multi-sensor watches, laboratories. That's what I'm going to talk about. So a few words about myself. I'm an entrepreneur who did his PhD in Wageningen University and founded a company from the PhD research results, which I'll show in another picture. Last year, after being an entrepreneur for 29 years, I became a part-time professor at Radboud University in the Department of Biophysics under the Donders Institute of Brain Cognition and Behavior. I also have a small appointment at Wageningen University in the field of consumer behavior studies, and I fulfill a number of committee roles in different boards and societies, which has as a common denominator, say, the intersection of science, technology, innovation, and sustainability. Those are the drivers behind my professional life. It started many years ago in the 80s when I was doing research, PhD research on insects. These are parasitic wasps, and they are beautiful creatures which have a brain, a healthy brain. This wasp is 0.5 millimeter in size, so you can imagine how large his head is. That's really a fraction of a millimeter, and it has a fully functional brain that allows this animal to learn, to have memory, to make choices, to discriminate, and it goes after the eggs of butterflies. And this, when this parasitic wasp finds the egg of a butterfly, it puts her egg in this egg, and as a result, not a caterpillar comes out, but one or more parasitic wasps. So that's why these animals are put to use in the field of biological control of insect pests, of which Professor Joop van Lente in Wageningen was the driving force and my PhD supervisor. This led to very interesting questions, such as how can these tiny wasps find their moth eggs in giant fields? Do they use smell? Do they use taste? But these wasps fly during the day, and these butterflies lay their eggs at night. How is that possible? So I worked hard on designing different instruments, heart rate devices, olfactometers, wind tunnels, in which I could study the walking behavior of the insects and the flight behavior of the insects, and subject them to all sorts of stimuli, odor stimuli, taste stimuli, so that I could distinguish between smell and taste and could see what they could perceive during walking or flight. And I started writing software. So this is what software looked like in the 80s. This is for those of you who remember, who recognize the DOS screen, thereby also disclose their age, because this is what computer people above 50, or maybe even above 60, will well remember these screens. Black and white screens, just a few buttons that allow you to make some, to execute a few very simple functions. And this is me running the software while watching a parasitic wasp. And I got fascinated by the technology and by the things I could study with it. So here's an example of insect behavior studied and recorded on a computer. So at that time, the human observer was who scored the behavior on the computer. That's how I started. And in order to understand what's going on here, if these caterpillars are able to defend themselves against a parasite, you have to watch their behavior really closely. What is an attack? What is a defense, an approach, escape? And by doing this systematically, I found out that we can describe the behavior of insects as a sequence of events that can be measured, that can be put in a sequential order, of which you can time the duration. And by doing that, you can find out how certain species are well adapted to each other, such this wasp called Cotesia glomerata is well adapted to Pyrrhus brassicae, because it has learned that if it lays an egg, there's most likely another butterfly egg nearby, so it will immediately go back to attack and search and stay inside this attack ovipositor loop, whereas Cotesia rubecula shows different behavior. After laying an egg, it goes back to flight or walking. Sorry, that was too soon. And then, because this Pyrrhus rape lays his egg individually, and Pyrrhus brassicae lives them in big clusters. So evolutionary, it makes good sense to search in the neighborhood, because with this species, if you are the natural enemy of this one, you better stay close to the eggs, because there's likely to be eggs nearby. And while doing this and writing software for this analysis of this behavior, I thought, well, if this is true for parasitic wasps, it may be true for other species as well. And that's how the interest arose among my colleagues within the department, across departments, at scientific conferences. People started asking, if this works for your parasites, can it work for my beetles? Can it work for my mice? Can it work for birds? So gradually, the idea arose, well, this way of approaching behavior and using the computer to record and analyze also works in primates, non-human primates. It works in children, it works in adults, it works in professionals who are being trained. They're all performing behavior. They are trying to achieve a goal. And in order to understand how they do that, and if they're successful, we can record their actions and put their actions in a sequence and time them and use statistical methods to find where they go wrong, or where they need training, or where the adaptation between human and machine is not optimal. And this led to the idea of developing this package, the software package, my first software package, into a commercial product. And after finishing my PhD, I decided not to pursue an academic career, but to become an entrepreneur. And I thought we can measure behavior if we really drill down to the building blocks, the components that make up the behavior of an individual, such as the movements, the postures, the gestures, the activities. or the interactions between humans, between animals, or between humans and animals, and humans and systems. And I found a niche by making the measurement tools that can perform that role. So I started turning this program into a product, and in 1990, this is what the computers looked like that the software would run on. I made a special version for all these different devices. They are now in my museum cabinet in the reception area of my building. And I started selling the software based on the concept to make the tool generic and suitable for many applications. And 30 years ago, it looked like this. And this package still exists, is now version 15. And we've gone through, say, one big generation every 2 years. We're constantly innovating. And it's now using around the world, cited in 12,000 papers. It has 30,000 users around the world. Looks quite different. It goes with the flow. It became a modern Windows application. We're now porting it to the cloud, into browser-based application. But the fundamental concept is still the same, that, say, here the human expert watches the behavior and scores the behavior according to a coding scheme. You see a coding scheme here. This is a coding scheme that leads to a timeline with events, and each event has a duration and a frequency, and that allows us to integrate it with physiology, with brain signals or cardiovascular signals, or facial expression or eye tracking, and that allows a multimodal analysis. Well, over the years, we have elaborated from, say, direct observation of behavior to a whole portfolio of products for initially animal behavior research, but later human behavior research. So we are sort of covering the whole animal kingdom, and that has resulted in a number of products and integrated solutions which address various aspects of behavior and brain functioning, such as cognition and memory, or locomotion and gait, or for different anxiety and fear, welfare, for rodents, for zebrafish, for humans. And our customers look for these keywords. We know that these trigger their attention and then find the tool they need. Well, one of the key tools that we made after first finishing the direct observation on humans was the tool making use of computer vision. And computer vision, said using computers to analyze video images and extract behavior from that, became sort of the main pillar under our the product portfolio for brain research. Here we see an example of a rat being followed in a swim tank. This is the famous Morris maze experiment, in which the rat looks for a hidden platform, and its performance in that setup is an indicator of its memory and learning capabilities. This is for a very simple example. We can make them very complex by programming the software to deliver stimuli and read out sensor devices, and that leads to patterns that we can analyze graphically or numerically, and in terms of also the metrics. And this has become a really wide use tool for behavioral research in animals. Well, we made it such that we can combine that with all sorts of apparatus. On the one hand, apparatus that the neuroscientists are used to, such as this Morris maze or the open field or an object recognition task, or novel inventions such as instrumented cages equipped with optogenetics, electrophysiology, microdialysis, to directly analyze what's going on inside the brain, what we are seeing on the video image. And that resulted in a product line called Phenotyper, which does fully automated phenotyping, meaning we place a mouse or a rat in a case. Here we see a mouse, here we see a rat. This case has the function of a home cage. It means it delivers food and water, shelter, and some bedding, and all the observation electronics is in the top unit and sends this signal to the computer, where we can run fully automated test paradigms, so that, for instance, after 6 days in the cage, we can assess if the animal has a memory disorder, whether it has an anxiety disorder, an eating disorder, or a locomotion disorder, all in a fully automated fashion without any human interference, while safeguarding the welfare of the animal. Well, this has become quite a breakthrough, but later we decided, well, if we can do this with mice in a home cage, why not scale up the home cage to the home of a human being and track people in their home environment or in their naturalistic environment, such as people in a shopping environment or children in a classroom to study their movements, the place preference, their activity, their locomotion. And that became another product, which is sort of the scaled up version of this vision system, using different sensors, but applying the same mathematical algorithms. So for the trajectory analysis, it really doesn't matter for us if we start with a video camera or a GPS tracker or an ultra wideband triangulation device. It works independently. Well, this became the foundation of an organization that we gradually built out over the world with local offices and distributors, and now 165 people and more than 11,000 customers around the world. But where do you find this type of technology? Well, the main business is sales and neuroscience. And neuroscience for us meaning mostly preclinical neuroscience, the drug discovery, safety research, drug efficacy, basic neurobiology in animal models. At universities, 80% of our business comes from universities, such as these universities, and pharmaceutical industry. That's by far the biggest commercial market around the world. And this also, the healthy brain research also became healthy business. So the company has been growing, even in the past year with the lockdown of universities worldwide, we still managed to grow in turnover, and more than 50% of this comes from brain research, from neuroscience. So that is really the core, the main pillar under our business. Now, I'm not doing, how am I doing time-wise, Arthur or Marion?
You're doing fine. You have 9 more minutes.
Oh, right, plenty of time. Okay. But we can never sit back and relax. So we have a healthy business now, but we must make sure that this business is also healthy 5 years and 10 years from now. So we are constantly doing market research on trends and opportunities. So we have to listen, we serve science. So we need to listen to the scientists, the opinion leaders, to see where is the field going, where are the different fields going that we are serving. So, and the research in the past year told us that these are the trends that we have to watch and that we have to cater to. So for instance, behavior researchers want automation. So the human observer, the package that we started with, the human observer is more and more replaced by automated sensors. And we also see that research is moving from the lab to the naturalistic context. That's exactly what the Healthy Brain Study is doing, equipping consumers or volunteers with sensors to monitor their activity 24/7, not during a 10-minute visit to the hospital, but around the clock. We are not only interested, or people don't want just activity or cardio function. No, they want both. Multimodal measurement requiring different sensors, sensor fusion and data integration. The individual behavior is one thing, but many brain disorders lead to disturbed social behavior. Think of autism or schizophrenia that lead to social isolation or disturbed social interaction. So we have to accommodate social behavior studies in animals and in humans. It's more complex than studying one animal at a time. These novel sensor technologies result in massive amounts of data. Those big data can only be processed with smart AI algorithms to turn data masses into insights. And also the top right, our customers expect the data and the results to be available anytime, anywhere. So we have to move away from PC applications to cloud applications to browser-based operating system independent packages. Here, also a link to the Nijmegen Healthy Brain Study. Research moves away from the clinic to the field. So that's a little bit similar to the one second here. Indeed, from a few participants to hundreds of participants, people participating study at home, expecting surveys to be taken through browsers, handheld devices. And last but not least, we should not forget about the scientists of the future, the students. The newest technologies allow us to make teaching tools available online. And actually last week during my first neuroscience teaching as a professor, we gave the whole practical in the student rooms at home on their own PCs, and we managed to do fairly complex computer vision exercises on the home computers of the students. I was very happy that that worked out. And all this is supported by technological breakthroughs. We don't make those, we just take advantage of them. Sensors that are becoming cheaper, smaller, and more available. Computer power that costs almost nothing anymore, and storage. Internet, 5G, our customers always online. Artificial intelligence, more and more libraries are becoming available. We can take use of that. Open source initiatives, Google tools. Our researchers make big advantage of that, take advantage of that. But we cannot do it alone. And here's the bridge to Nijmegen, to Radboud University and Wageningen University. We are just a small company. We have a nice team of engineers, but by far we don't have all the knowledge and engineering expertise that we need. So for us, innovation comes through collaboration, and collaboration is in the DNA of our company from day one. We have, as a small technology company, we have always teamed up with knowledge providers and other SME companies. And for many years, for 8 years, we did that in the framework of the I3B Foundation, ICT for Brain, Body and Behavior, which this summer merged with One Planet Research Center. So now this mode of collaboration continues under the flag of One Planet Research. And these are some of the main partners that we work with in the Netherlands. And at last, rounding off, 3 projects that are currently in progress, in which we team up with Radboud University, and so that gives me the opportunity to participate both as an entrepreneur and as the professor at Radboud University. The Candy project, chaired by Jan Buitelaar, who's in the meeting right now. Welcome, Jan. Beautiful project about comorbidity of autism and other brain conditions, such as the epilepsy. So the co-occurrence of autism and epilepsy is a key topic of this project. Why do these diseases coexist? There are no effective treatments. So we're looking into the interaction between genetic factors and environmental factors, especially at the early age. We're looking for mechanisms, we're looking for new strategies. And we, as a tools provider, develop new technologies for animal studies to make this research possible in the mouse as an animal model, eventually hoping to help these children to grow up as happy, healthy people. Second project aims to trials, also active involvement of Radboud UMC, an EMI project at European level, lots of partners. And that project is focusing on autism, in particular the early diagnosis. So rather than assessing the cognitive or developmental functions of a baby or a toddler during a brief visit to the hospital, we are developing a smart baby suit that the baby or the toddler can wear continuously, allowing continuous monitoring of locomotion, posture, and behavioral functions at home, using machine learning and making something applicable, usable for parents, clinicians, and researchers with these partners. So we are the software partner, Demcon is the hardware partner, and we will develop a system that researchers and clinicians and parents can access to spot a disorder at the earliest stage, because the earlier you detect it, the bigger the chance of success of therapy. Last slide, just awarded the project Inge 3, Innovaties voor Gedrag en Gezondheid in Gelderland, in which we are jumping to the adult stage, teaming up with IMEC to bring their prototype multi-sensor wristwatch further towards commercialization. Currently, there's only a few devices on the market that lend themselves for this type of research. The Verily Study Watch is one, but it's not available on the market. Only a few researchers have access, such as Bas Bloem and his team. We want to make a similar device available worldwide for research groups, allowing multi-sensor measurement of a variety of behavioral and physiological modalities, allowing people, the participants, the patients and researchers to detect risk factors, efficacy of interventions, and mental well-being, while safeguarding privacy, which is a main lacking factor of the commercial devices, such as the Apple Health Watch or the Garmin and TomTom devices. So there's an unmet need for that. And last but not least, I'm rounding off, saying goodbye as entrepreneur and as professor. As professor, I was going to have my inaugural lecture this year. Unfortunately, that was postponed due to COVID, so nobody could see the inside of my toga. So I'm showing it to you right now, because the interior of the toga tells my story as an entrepreneur that started with parasites and that moved on to different animals, to rodents and chickens, to babies and adults, and design of cars and airplanes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Lucas.
Stop the sharing so I can see the chat box.
Yes. So, thank you very much. Very nice talk. I don't see any questions yet in the chat box, but let me start with a question. We hear at the university and the medical center that companies have a really hard time to connect to the university and the medical center and get access to data and the science going on. You are very well embedded in the university and the medical center. And of course, I don't think everybody can become a professor at the university, but could you give some tips to companies that would try to connect to the university and the medical center?
Well, one of the things I learned, a key success factor in collaboration is give and take. So start with giving. I encounter many entrepreneurs who are focused on taking and not on giving. So they make a connection with someone they don't know, like a scientist, and they hope to get something like knowledge or technology or expertise or an algorithm. And they are often very secretive about what they're developing. So the scientist may think, well, great that you want something from me, but what am I getting in return? I've learned over the years, you should always start with giving. So you come with an interesting presentation, you give a talk, you show something, you give them something, you let them try out something. People become enthusiastic, they start liking it, they become talkative, and then they start talking more about their work. And they'll say, this is really interesting what you are doing. Maybe I should put a student on this. Would you be willing to co-supervise? And then the giving from the scientist starts, and the scientist sees, I'm going to receive something, I'm willing to give back. And I've always put that in practice. Comes with personality, so you must be open-minded, you must be transparent. But I meet so many secretive entrepreneurs that I become sort of reluctant myself if I talk to them. Hey, if you are not going to share anything with me, I'm not going to share back. So that would be the first advice I'm giving.
Okay, thank you. That's, I think, a very good comment, but that's of course two ways. It's also from the university, it's also giving and taking. I see that Frank Smeets has a question. Frank.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Lucas. I'm a bit overwhelmed by all the things you presented. Still, you're supporting the trends and interactions research, in fact, from the data integration. You use tools from other parties and find the root cause analysis, etc., as far as I understood. These tools and these algorithms, in fact, that you develop, where and how do you see that becoming available for integration in personalized supporting e-health apps? You hinted to that in the end. Can you give a little bit more background on that? How do you see that?
Yes, well, what you are pointing at is really also the transition that we are into right now. So we were for many years the supplier of laboratory tools. We're selling a tool to a single researcher who's working with a small group of volunteers in a very fancy laboratory where he has 10 subjects working with our software. So that was the model that was used for many years. And now we see this trend towards large cohort studies, which is becoming possible due to, say, wearable sensors and other devices that people that can be distributed to not only 10, but to 100 or 1,000 participants at a reasonable cost. And that has also made us think, and we also committed ourselves to the development of a new sort of platform technology that is say a cloud-based software solution and a database architecture and a communication structure that allows us to hook up with sensors from a variety of vendors. We don't make these hardware sensors ourselves, so we open ourselves up to any sensor manufacturer on the front end, and at the back end, we open ourselves up to academic groups and commercial parties to hook up algorithms for pattern recognition and post-processing, because we are not experts in all the domains that these technologies can be used for. Say, Guillen is an expert in stress. We are not experts in stress. We are experts in multimodal measurement, data integration, data storage, data synchronization. So we can make sure that if you measure 3 modalities in a human subject, we will make sure they end up in a database and are ready for structured analysis, whether it's 1 or 10 or 1,000 participants. But don't ask us what exactly is the readout for stress. That is what we expect the scientists to do. And then we will look together for an algorithm that does stress detection. Then either the research, Guillen has that algorithm himself, or he knows of a group that has that algorithm, or he knows of a company that has that algorithm. And then we will build an interface to plug the stress detector into our platform.
Okay. Does that mean you will become the improved AWS of this world?
No, we will probably become also a customer of AWS, because we are not going to build a data center or a data warehouse. So we will use available industrial solutions, but we will add to that our added value, and our added value is really in the analysis, so the measurement and analysis of behavior and physiology on humans and animals. That's our niche. That's where we can differentiate ourselves. And we are certainly not going to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I see that Marion has a nice question as an ending question. Marion?
Hi, Lucas. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I was wondering, of all achievements that you have achieved so far, of which one are you most proud?
Well, you know, as the scientist in me gets really excited if our tools are cited in a top-level publication. So that's one thing. So we maintain a list of all the Nature and Science and Cell and Neuron papers in which our tools are used. And we are very proud of that, I and my colleagues. So that's one thing. We are also really proud if we learn that a drug has reached the market based on research in which our tools were used. So if one of these pharma companies manages to take a drug to the market, takes a long time, as you know, but we've been around for long. So we do see that research started in the early this century is now leading to drug registrations. And most recently, we were really proud to be involved in COVID-19 research around the world in various places where our tools are used for vaccine testing and drug testing or in drug development.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lucas, Guillen, and Monique, all for your very interesting presentations. I think it was really nice to see the different perspectives on the potential of healthy brain. I would also like to thank Marion and John for organizing this meeting. So this is the end of the presentations. So we now go to the drinks, and basically the drinks work as follows. You will be sent to one small group You don't know who you will encounter at your table. The drinks you have to bring yourself. And of course, if you're interested to join and have nice conversations on the connection between all the dots in a healthy brain, good luck. And thank you all for participating. Bye-bye.
Thank you.